So I went through that, the listing that we had as well, and I just ranked them.
Yeah.
See, because on that website, when you click onto it, sometimes it's hard to tell what, in what order did people basically rank things. But can you get into that survey thing on this?
Let's see.
Do you have that link?
Well, it would need to be, I can't check my work email.
Oh, you can.
I can't.
I can get it on here, I've got it.
I was gonna say, if somebody can log in to an email where they have it, they could.
Is that because that's a public?
Well, we can't have more than one Microsoft Outlook on one computer for some reason. So nobody has one on here. So like I'm on my Gmail right here. I forwarded the PowerPoint to my Gmail.
Oh, got it.
I've got it. The results you want?
Yeah.
I've got it.
Yeah.
on here.
So, what I was gonna show is, did everybody notice that you can, in here, in this, you can click on show details?
Oh,
No.
And,
Wow.
and when you do that, you get this. And this is very enlightening to the survey. So for example, you might see, a 3.2 for property tax relief, but you see that it actually, property tax relief, believe it or not, had the highest or one of the highest negative, zeros. The only other one was local funding and grants that had a higher percentage of people who said zero on that one. So I thought that was interesting. And I actually did sort that out, and you can, to see if property owners did that differently than residents, and it was not significant. It was really, people don't think that property tax relief is where the money should be spent.
Or that you're getting enough back for it.
To make it worth it.
Make it worthwhile.
It is property tax relief.
In the end, the whole thing is property tax.
Right,
Yeah.
but later on expecting
How,
a refund back
yes,
on property tax.
how we spend it,
$20
obviously like, Big Sky that spends it at the Warren Miller Performing Arts Center, that's not property tax relief.
Right.
But, we use it for capital improvements and
right.
things that you would really have to do regardless of whether
but
we spend.
wasn't property tax relief one of the ways we sold it the first time around?
It was, but so what you see now is
It's changed,
it's
yeah,
changed.
yeah.
And sometimes you sell things, thinking they're what people want, but until you ask, sometimes you don't find.
And it changes what they want.
Yeah, here, I'll give you this, I'll see if I can log into my computer, I can log into my phone. This. You can have those, James.
Well, I didn't realize we could do that, and I'm glad you didn't either, Jody, and I don't feel like the only one.
No.
Yeah, I actually stumbled on it by accident, and it is super helpful, I think, so.
Now, I watched you do that, but
It says details, at the bottom of that thing, it says details.
oh, I see.
Yeah, for the.
Okay, high detail CD, yeah, okay. Wow.
And like the streets one had a very high percentage of fives.
Probably because they're in such horrible condition right now, just saying.
Yeah, and so,
So it's kind of top of everybody's mind.
yeah, there was no question, absolutely no question, that streets and sidewalks ranked the highest on everybody's.
Mhm. And that can be a variety of things they're talking about. Sidewalks for cleaning the snow. But when the
Yeah.
Department of Transportation redid the highway and they gave the city that piece of equipment to use to clean the sidewalks, but it's too wide to get through some of the places. It won't get through, for instance, on the corners where they have changed the structure. It won't fit, it's too wide. Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to me that stormwater ranked ahead of the community pool.
Yeah.
I know, I was like, wow.
I thought that was shocking, actually, because I thought no one would know what stormwater was.
I know.
but they seem to.
Help me out here. This means that 74 people rated that number one.
Although
One, yeah,
83
big
people
one.
rated it number one,
And
and
this
stormwater was
only 12
74.
people rated
This
it.
is
Yeah.
overall.
Yes, yeah, so
That's
so
what
that's
this
why
means.
that's
So there were
helpful.
82
So you
people that were very passionate about
yes,
it.
you can see that you know how that breaks up a little bit, you know, in terms because honestly, if you could theoretically have a lot of people rank something in the middle,
Right.
and it could score higher than something that a lot of people were very passionate about, but also a lot of people were negative about.
Right.
Right.
And that's kind of what happened there.
Yeah.
But the most,
Which one?
the city pool, the community pool
Oh.
was 83,
Mhm.
and the stormwater was 74 that were very passionate about it.
Ah,
But if you look at streets and sidewalks, there was 140 that were very passionate about it. And upgrade infrastructure to allow city growth and development was 95.
that was surprising more than me.
That
And
was-
I voted low on that, because to me, that's what developers should be doing.
Yeah, I honestly was very shocked about that. I thought it was gonna go completely the other way. But but that's why you do these kinds of things, so you find, so let's formally get the meeting, started if we could, so we'll call the meeting to order. And I think you can show all members present in the minutes. And then,
Push that back. Thank you. I just want one.
I'll take one here. The first, roll of business, we just need an approval of the minutes, or a motion to approve the minutes for November 6th.
So moved.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for November 6th. All those in, or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we'll start out, actually, talking a little bit about, the agenda for the January 9th meeting and how it works, and then, that way we won't get sucked into talking about the results and find ourselves out of time. It could easily happen, so, thought I brought it down.
There's some behind
Yeah,
that. if you get any.
I have a copy of it.
Thank you. James has drafted a kind of an agenda here. And so we can talk about that and then talk a little bit about who will own pieces of this. Because I think in order to have this go well, I think we need to have, you know, either one or two people, you know, be responsible for a section. And, you know, if you are not comfortable getting up in front of people and talking, like Glory, we know, is not.
And Tom is not.
You know, that's okay too, you know, so we don't feel you have to get up and talk if that's not where your,
Yeah, that's tough for Glory to do.
comfort zone is. You know, when James and I talked, a couple of things that we talked about in terms of the agenda, and it's up here, which is, you know, just a short thing on, you know, why it was created and what it does. But then, really, I think we should talk about where the money has been spent. Because if we look at the survey, and a lot of the questions or comments allude to the misappropriation of the money. Now, I will tell you, not one of them, when you read them, will say, well, maybe one or two, give a specific thing that they thought it was spent on that it shouldn't have been. And so while people say it was misspent, they have a very hard time enumerating why they think that. And so, you know, so a presentation on, you know, where the money's been spent, what it's been spent on, And this is where one of you guys had talked about audience response system. Was that you?
That was
Okay.
Diane.
Yeah,
Where you
what was
have like the question and everybody answers. with
Yeah.
a pointer.
Yeah, there's kind of an interactive.
And
I'm
I
not familiar with it a whole lot.
okay, I got the name of a guy who used it in a presentation that I was at that I really liked. And I will find out, but I looked, there's about 10 different programs that do this kind of thing, and one of them you can get free for nonprofits, so would be able to get it for free, otherwise it's like $500 a month.
It's an app?
It's not, it's a program, yes, but when you, for the audience, they just log on to a website.
Oh, okay.
So they don't have to download anything and and it's device agnostic, so it doesn't care if it's Android or iPhone or whatever it is. But one of the things that kind of I envision a little bit is saying, kind of asking people questions into the audience and having them give them feedback and then give them the right answer.
Tom, did the respondents use the word misappropriation?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
Oh yeah. Oh no, there is a small group of people who genuinely feel that the money has been purposely spent in ways that it should not have been.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite an accusation.
It is quite an accusation, and I don't, but there was, not, again, when you look at when you read through the comments, you'll feel like, wow, that's a lot, but then when you look at the survey results, you find, very clearly that, I'm gonna give you the actual numbers here, almost 80% believe the resort tax has had a positive impact on the community.
Yeah.
So it tells you that there's 20% of the people who don't feel that way. So that group is a group of 20%.
Yeah.
And it's interesting there that there's a lower percentage that are very likely to vote for it.
Yeah.
So that says that they have questions, and so you may never get that 20%, but you certainly can
Concern should
raise.
be addressed.
Yeah.
It's still,
Yeah.
you don't say everybody likes it, forget about it. You
Yeah.
still have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A majority 57% are very likely to vote for it. And then another 10% are somewhat likely. So you've got a 67%, 68% who are, either somewhat likely or very likely to vote for a resort tax.
It's a majority, but yeah, I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
The
Oh, I
difference
think it's
between
a-
those two is you still, the education part
Yeah.
of it is kind of.
And interesting, I actually think it's funny the other way, that the very unlikely to vote for it is only 11%.
Yeah.
So when you go very unlikely and somewhat unlikely, you get to the 20% again. That 20% number will
Fluctuate.
keep popping up in that negative realm. And, even if you look now, we do have the ability to look at the details in it, but you can look in, the people who are really negative on stuff is about 20%. Now, interestingly enough, I did do a sort on it where you can see people who said that I wanted to see if people who said that they didn't support it, was all like zeros or something like that. And that wasn't the case. So even the people who said they weren't in favor of it, or did not think it had a positive impact on the community, said that they still, thought it should be spent on streets and sidewalks with a 5 or something like that, their answers were averaged lower than everybody else's, but not by much. So interestingly enough. And here we are talking about the
Yeah.
survey.
And how you're copying 5%.
Yeah, you saw that
I
comment?
did.
So actually, it's funny. I thought about scrubbing that one, but because it was me, I did not scrub it. But
I wanna know what an arcade group is.
but to be honest with you, the comment is not wrong, right? I do get to pocket 5% of the resort tax,
And so does every other business.
and so
owner.
does every other business owner. So while it's a little derogatory in a sense, there's a comment that says that I pocket 5% and buy Jeeps with it.
Yeah.
But the reality is, it's true. Because as a business owner, I'm entitled to keep 5%, and what do I do with that 5%? I spend it in my business. So every business does that. So, it actually, when I read that, I realized that was not one of our spending items here. We right now mandate that 5% of the resort tax goes to return to business owners, and we didn't ask people how they felt about that.
Right.
So we kind of missed the boat on that one. So that's why I left that, for a
But it is
couple
something
reasons.
to think about.
It is
right?
something, and I
But
think,
the business owners put a lot of time, I mean, I found that just being open through the month of November.
yep,
You know, it's just your bookkeeping, trying to keep track.
it
And
does,
have all these people out there collecting that resort
it
tax.
takes
from
some
them.
time and effort.
It does. It's
So,
not-
so I think at the community meeting, that's a question we can ask. How do people think about the 5% to business owners? Can you go back to the agenda again? And I will try to stay more focused, I promise. So, there were a couple of things that are maybe a little bit funky. If we do honestly talk about, was it misappropriated? And so, there was money that was spent on water and sewer labor, right?
Correct.
And so that is not technically a capital improvement, but it can be if that labor is spent on capital improvements.
Correct.
And I think that was the theory there. The other is the way the tax relief was done, which was audited, to the city's defense, and it was very public. There was no hiding how they were doing the tax relief, which was by transferring the money to the general fund.
So they didn't have to raise.
So they didn't have to raise taxes. So the current auditors came in and said, hey, this is not the way that we believe it should be done. But we had two separate auditing firms who had reviewed it previously, who said it was an acceptable way to do
I think
it.
it's important to say that.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like there's a bit of misinformation.
Yeah, some people use the word illegal, that it was done illegally.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
true.
And
But
it
if it has-
isn't, and it just isn't so.
And it passed 2 audits before that.
Right.
No,
so
not
that's-
two audits. No,
Two auditors.
no,
Two
two
auditors.
separate auditors. It two different auditors. It passed
Was it audited
15
every year?
every year, 15 years of
Yes.
audits,
Yes,
It passed.
or more than that.
Yeah, more.
And
More
then-
than that.
and it wasn't
And then-
until our latest auditors
Yes.
came in and they said, well,
Wait a second.
Yeah.
And then the present auditors also said it's all an interpretation, and this is how we interpret it.
Mhm.
So that is an admission that it is an interpretation, and it's like, okay,
So the city
Yeah,
was.
that's
it's not,
important
there's
point.
nothing illegal has ever been done.
That's an important point to address during that,
And it was also very public. I mean, it was
Oh, yeah.
in every single budget for every year that was publicly, anybody who showed up to any budget saw that was how it was being done. There was no hiding it. It's in the public audit report. I mean, it's in everything that was public. So there was no hiding it.
well, don't you think at the point that the current auditors brought it to light, that it was their interpretation that something was done incorrectly?
Yeah.
Don't you think that's when the people that are now using illegally and misappropriated and stuff, I think that might be when that began.
Yeah, I think
A lot of
It is.
no, I will tell you, since the resort tax has started, there has been a small group of people in town who have always said that the resort tax that their city was not spending on how it was intended.
Oh, really?
Yes,
That
has
far
always,
back?
yes, yeah, they always have been,
I just figured that once they saw a crack in the procedure, that maybe they, stuck their foot in
Well,
it.
that
and
added fuel to their.
Yeah.
Added fuel,
Because
exactly.
now it's say, we have proof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
Well, it's worth addressing. In the
Well,
sense-
absolutely.
I think-
All of
in
it,
the,
yeah.
well,
you
in
have
the timeline and to ensure that we don't have cracks next time.
That's correct.
And it is also why, it gives the reason why we're rewriting it.
Yeah.
To be more clear, so we don't run into these situations in the future.
So then, some question and answers about how the money has been spent. And one of the things that I'm gonna caution everybody to do is occasionally people will make comments, right? Like, the money was misappropriated. Okay, thank you for your comment. Does anybody else have a comment? As opposed to trying to argue with a statement that somebody's making. If someone has a question that we can answer and we have facts to base it up, we'll answer that question. If they ask a question we don't have facts to, we'll say, we don't have the answer to that. But we need to be cautious about creating an argument with somebody. Again, 80% of the people are not gonna do that. And I think that even 5% of the 20% are not even gonna do that. So I think we'll find that the meeting will run well and that we won't have.
So you don't wanna ask them how they feel it was misappropriated?
Or to be specific about,
Be more
Yes, I think,
specific?
I think you could ask them a question, like, there's a difference between asking a
But I
clarifying
don't wanna
question and
just-
arguing with
Yeah,
them.
I don't wanna just
You-
blow off.
You
this
don't wanna say,
statement.
no, it wasn't,
I wanna
right?
know why they feel
Yes,
that.
yeah.
I wanna
Yeah.
know why they feel that.
Yeah, so why do you, what do you think was misappropriated? But one of the things, it's important to allow people to make comments and to listen to their comments, but not for us to kind of, to tell them they're wrong all the time.
Right,
Does that make sense? We have to listen to what they have to say, and that may be their feeling, and it's just our obligation to listen to that and say,
But I would want
thank
clarification.
you for your comment. Yeah, clarification is very good. How do you think it was misappropriated?
Yeah, public
What item do you
hearing is
think
just
it
what
was?
it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
to hear what the
Yeah.
public has
Do you
to
have a
say.
suggestion for how we could stop that and prevent that in the future? Get rid of the resort tax. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
moving right along, next question.
Yeah, So then, the next big thing is really just a presentation of the survey results, right? Of what we discovered. And then I wanna add, something that into this, James, which is, additional questions we'd like to ask. So something like, do you feel like, 5% should go to businesses, or, as we dig into these results, you guys may have questions you'd like clarified. Well, we can do that in the public meeting through this survey system and potentially get feedback. So for example, if we look at the survey results, one of the things that rates very low was city services such as resort tax enforcement, clerk, city hall, courts, and legal, right? So we lumped a lot into that. And a question that I personally would have is, do people think resort tax money should not be spent on enforcement of collecting the resort tax? Or do they just not want it to go to courts and legal?
Right.
Well, I think including the word city hall in there probably.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just a clarifying question we could ask.
Mhm.
Do folks think that we should enforce the resort tax? There are several comments that say we should, by the way.
Can you, not that anybody needs to know it, but is it possible to tie these comments to a name?
No.
The answer to that question is no. The answer to the question is yes, but we're not going to.
Okay.
There was a lot of concern.
Yeah,
about
so the answer, we are not connecting, that's why you'll find that we're not giving, some of the full information, but what we've promised is we're not gonna connect names and
Right.
comments, so.
And
While
somebody-
that data does potentially exist in the software, we are not gonna do that, and we will actually scrub that from the recorded data.
Good.
But at the public hearing, somebody may stand up and say, I made that comment.
But that's fine, and they
we
can
just-
make,
I'm just saying, if
Yeah.
that happens, then that's fine.
Yeah.
They're fessing up themselves.
Yeah.
No, there was a lot of people that didn't wanna complete it because they had to put their name on it.
Yeah.
And Jeremy tried to reassure them, I tried to reassure them, Tim did, that, nothing they said on here would ever be,
but the reality is that this is a
Exactly.
public process, right?
it is.
And if they wanna make a comment that they don't wanna attribute it to themselves, then it's not a public process.
Exactly.
And so if they felt like they couldn't make a comment on it, they're welcome to come to the public meeting and stand up and make a public comment.
Which is worse if they didn't want to put their name on the survey, standing up in public would even be to my way of thinking anyway, a worse thing to do, so.
One of the comments is, kind of along that line, is somebody commented that it looks like the survey is designed to create activity on Red Lodge Bay.
Yeah, they said that they thought we were just stirring the pot, basically.
Yeah.
So, about the agenda, does anybody have any items they would like to see or any comments about how they would like to see that happen?
Do we have a copy of this?
It
Not
was,
yet, no. I just was doing it before everybody got here. I had some written notes and I just put it on here.
That, one of the things, and I don't know that it needs to go on the agenda, or maybe it would be listed underline the agenda, but the education of the public and the education of the business owners as to what was taxed, how. And, there were several, I shouldn't say several, there was more than one comment in there that people thought there should be better education.
yeah, there were a few comments about education.
Well, and the not sure column was fairly high as we expected.
Yeah.
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 There, but I would say there was equally enough, or maybe not equally, but there were several comments that said we're not taxing enough items. That they felt like there should be more specific items taxed. So you get both sides of that, right? You're taxing items that I don't think you should, and you're not taxing enough, and people are buying things that should be taxed, and we're not collecting enough money. So the reality is that, it's, people, there's definitely a percentage of people who feel like that more items should be taxed in order to raise more money, to do the things that the resort taxes.
So is that education component, is that part of the agenda, or does it come in with the others? The other pieces of,
I mean, I wonder as in that thing, if we should talk about what is taxed currently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think talk about the fact that that's not what we're reviewing, and that would be reviewed in a separate process.
Oh, this mentioned you by name,
Yeah,
I just saw.
By
it.
Jeeps.
And his Rubicon.
yes, yeah. But like I said, I read it and
that's what it was going after, is G's.
yeah. But the reality is, it's not wrong.
No.
I mean, you could.
Well, that's not the intent of this.
I understand
so-
it, but the reality is that the person is exactly right. What they say is correct, is that the business owners keep 5% of the resort tax that they collect, and they spend it on whatever they want to.
Yep, absolutely.
Some of it's gonna be for, you're auditing in taxes. obviously that costs
Yes,
money.
again, whatever they want to is
You-
what it gets
you
spent
have-
on.
How many
That's-
bookkeepers do you have? You have one for each?
Oh. And I have one main one.
One main one?
Yeah.
Well, it would make sense to connect
That's
that.
like a salary that they're getting paid for the work that they're doing.
Yes.
Mhm.
So they should be able to spend it how they want to.
Well, it should
Right.
be, it should
But
be
we should
connected,
definitely bring it up.
well, and connected with the enforcement aspect, that's a carrot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want you to keep good books. Here's 5% of your resort tax.
Yeah,
Please keep
exactly.
good books. So if we have to go in and audit you.
Be thorough, you have the 5%
Yeah, because some, if you don't do audits, you don't know whether someone's collecting it and not reporting it to the city, or, or not collecting it at all, I mean, there's lots of different options that people could do there, they could collect it and, instead of saying they had $1,000 in sales, they could say they had $500 in sales,
You keep dragging us out of there, and I keep picking up that list of,
Comments, I know,
Well, there's some good comments out there.
there are some
Yeah.
good ones, yes.
there's many, in my rough count, there's as many positive as there are negative.
Oh, that's a step in the right direction.
And there's some that are just simple questions and,
I have another question before we move on about the survey itself, the people that took it. The name, first name, last name, if you put Minnie Mouse in there, would it let you go
Yes.
through?
yeah, and some people did.
And some people did.
Yeah, I
And some
mean,
people put
and
first name, or first, last.
and the reality is I could have put Colleen Stevenson in it, and then filled out the survey.
Oh, I didn't think of that, yes.
So,
yes,
so,
you could have,
so,
couldn't
you know, that's why we have to be cautious about trying to connect, you know, and that's why we said we wouldn't, is because it doesn't, but what we did is, and this is the reality, is that you make it more difficult for somebody who wants to come in and do 15 surveys or 20 surveys themselves to, you know, they have to be more creative to do it. And that just didn't appear to happen.
No, and the anonymous ones, you know, the ones where you just click a link and do it, you could actually do that.
Yeah,
And the ones that we sent out through the chamber's email list, those come with an email address and it does restrict you.
yeah.
It knows your email address and stops you.
You can't fill it out twice or three times.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, you restricted it to IP address too, but
Yeah.
the,
I mean, there's always a way around those.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do
But
one
it's-
at work and one at home.
Exactly, yes.
The idea is like, you're.
But why skew
It's
it?
the whole thing, you keep the honest people honest.
Yeah.
You know, you're never gonna stop.
it
Never gonna
appears
stop.
that, you know, so here's a couple things that I would say, is the results have not changed from the first 50 people who filled it out to the 250 people that filled it out. When you sort it by different feelings, you know, whether they're business owners or the data does not change drastically. So I think while there could be one or two, you know, what you would call fake things in there, it just doesn't look like it. I mean, I think,
Didn't set it enough to.
no, it didn't change it. I think it's accurate information. I think it was filled out honestly by people and.
Well, the reason that I'm continually asking these questions is because I was on the earlier, ad hoc committee for the police department. And the survey we sent out there was thrashed soundly, and a lot of questions were asked about the validity of the answers and our steps in safeguarding the answers and the people's private information, et cetera. And I would like to see that this not suffer the same.
Yeah, I don't think it will, and you know, one of the things that I would claim at least is that this is a public process. Government is a public process, and so you get to be anonymous when you vote yes or no, but your opinions in government are, there is no anonymous, you know, and that's the way our government was founded, is that, you know, that's why you have a public meeting, that's why we have open meetings, is so people can come and express their opinion. But you can't come and, you know, hide behind that, you can't show up at the council meeting, hide behind a, you know, cloak and dagger and give your opinion and ask people to respect that. You know, you have to be public.
And none of these questions on this, and we said that over and over again on this survey, none of them were controversial, you know, so, and it was up to them if they wanted to leave a comment or not. If they just completed the survey, it was totally.
Yeah, there's a little bit of pushback I'd wanna voice, and that would just be, it is worth, and we are, protecting people's identity for
Absolutely.
their comments.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because, you know,
absolutely.
they know that they're answering a survey to this committee,
Yeah.
not the entire town.
Yes.
And
And, yeah.
And we said we would,
Right,
so we have an obligation to do that.
absolutely.
Yeah, I
Well, and not
absolutely
even
agree with
all
that.
members of the committee are gonna, that's
Yeah.
why I asked you
I-
if we could put names together with comments. I don't
I-
want to.
And I
do
have
that.
access to all of it and I haven't.
I don't.
I haven't, no, there just isn't any reason to.
No,
Question?
I don't.
Just back off the survey again. I'm just wondering if the context of this meeting is the existing, renewal of existing resort tax only, or is it going to coincide with the idea of the 1%?
It will do both.
Okay, so you might wanna level set, you know, which is which, or which is intended to cover what.
Thank you, it's a very good point.
Yeah, I do have a slide on the 1%, but yeah. we should
Yeah, so you
definitely
wanna
have
add that as a, you know, the
To the
addition
agenda.
of the 1%, yeah.
So because we will need to absolutely explain that,
Yeah.
why we can ask for that extra 1% and what it can be used for.
Just one other question. I know park maintenance is the big thing that fell off the truck. on the last interpretation of the resort tax, but, do you need anything from the Parks Board to explain what the parks maintenance is and why it's so important to have it in resort tax?
Yeah, I
This
think
is
that, I
This
think,
is a very busy slide here, but I did get one slide that we could use. So this is something I wanna talk about a little more, is do we wanna use this presentation, at the public meeting? But, you know, I do have some of these things of what we've spent money on
And I-
through resort tax.
And I think you need to contrast it with what is not being met last year and this year. Of that list, nothing.
yeah, I think we need to be cautious about that. I don't think we want to use this meeting to try and justify any one set of expenditures over another, except in general categories. Because we would want to spend the entire time with presentations from everybody who would be potential recipients for it. And that's not the nature of this. We don't, you know, I think, while that is an option where, you know, the people who believe that local event and grant funding should be spent money, we give them an opportunity to speak and what they need and why they need that and how that would benefit. I think that would be, I think we would get ourselves too down in the weeds of this.
And I mention it only because they were previously funded out of resort tax.
Yeah.
And now they're not.
And I
We need to
think
make
one of
that
the things
point.
that you can rest your laurels on is that you rank like number 3 in park maintenance, ranks number 3 in the survey of what people think it should be spent.
And the goal will be, you know, like, we're not going to get into the weeds there, but write an ordinance in a way that you could come to the city council, and the city council each year, when they do their budget, can say, yes, that's legal for us to do that, and this is how much we're gonna do it, because that's what we have this year. And that's what the needs are, that'll become their job, not our job.
I think that's correct.
Mhm.
Yep, yeah. And, because that can change every year.
Yeah.
You
You
And
know, I
plus-
mean,
It does, yeah.
the people who want something, you know, I mean, and those priorities can change.
Yeah.
The wants and needs both change.
Of the community, you know, for us trying to predict the wants and needs of the community over the next 25 years is, I think,
And I apologize, I know I should know you, but what is your name?
I don't know why you should know me, but I'm Teresa Whistler. I just came to
I'm
listen.
sorry?
Teresa Whistler.
Okay,
I
thank
just
you.
came in to listen for I've got my Parks hat on.
so
I'm glad you came, too.
I have a question,
It's a good.
which is, who is interested in presenting and who is not interested in presenting?
I can present in specific, some things.
Pieces,
that
yeah.
I do.
Yeah, I would hope that we'll divide some of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind.
As long as I'm not emceeing.
I know,
Okay.
yeah, I don't mind, that's fine, I
Okay.
don't have a problem talking with the word.
Okay, great. So what we will try and do is, I think, if you guys are amiable to this, is divide this up into sections that people will talk and present on. Then that way we can prepare for it by doing that. Does that make sense?
So long as those of us that are willing to present, the rest of you are gonna sit very closely and listen, and if we get stuck on the question that
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're gonna have to be, you know, I mean, this is our public meeting, and so we have to all be up there to receive the public comment.
So I think it might be beneficial to know who's gonna talk about what.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I think we need to decide that now, and
Exactly.
then we have a month to prepare
Right.
your section, and to gather, you know, to gather stuff.
So the very first one why was it created? I thought that'd be a good one for the mayor. It's as the first thing on the agenda, you can do a little introduction and do that.
Sure.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea, this is jumping in the middle of it, but at that point to explain too that there are county and city people. There's, we run into this with the TVA too. People say, well, we don't have a voice. Yes, you do. Because you can't vote doesn't mean you don't have a voice.
Yeah.
And, I mean, people were appointed to this that are in the county. Tom is a county. I'm going to be county. Any luck at all by the end of this month. So that, the fact that the city is open and listening is an important part. And it's kind of going back to when this thing started, and there was one comment saying living 4 miles outside the city being taxed, they don't have a say. Yes, you come to a meeting, you voice your opinion, everybody's happy to hear.
And of course, the city doesn't have a say-so in that, that's a state thing.
Yeah, we can't change it.
Even if we wanted to.
But-
Unless you
but we-
extend the state.
Yeah,
Yeah.
without the state approving it, yeah.
So that just, I guess, that comment didn't need to be made at this point, but that should be part of it. Not just why it was formed, but how it was formed.
Is this January 9th date set,
Yes.
permanent?
Was there a time?
I couldn't remember.
So we have not set a time, so let's, well, why don't we just do that now? My suggestion probably would be 5:30.
What day of the week is January 9th?
Thursday.
Thursday?
What is it, when do you get off work, Joanne?
When do I get off work?
Yeah.
What day is January 9th? Did you say?
Thursday.
Thursday? I can be out of there by 4:30.
But you can be out there, is 5:30 too early, is kind of what I'm
No.
looking at, does the shop close at 6 o'clock and to get more people there?
So the only thing that we maybe need to be cautious of a little bit is if you get too late, you wanted to avoid that, so people
Going
have,
home and not coming
yeah,
back
it's either
out.
going home and not coming back out, dinner or no dinner,
Yeah.
right? Like, you do it at 6, now it's gonna go 6 to 7:30, so that would be,
Inspiration to cut it.
Most
Yeah.
places, like offices and things like that, close at 5.
Okay.
You
So
know.
5:30 sounds like a legitimate time.
Yeah.
I'm not questioning it as much as just asking.
and I just feel like if you go like for 7, you end up
Yeah, it's
People
late.
go home and eat dinner and stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might go home and not come back.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
stay.
Yeah,
So you
one-
can't do that.
Especially January.
I know,
Yeah.
It'd be
exactly.
real easy just to
app
let
you were
you
talking
get
about, does
more.
that facilitate any kind of voting?
Yeah, no, yeah,
We could just
absolutely.
do a vote on certain times.
Yes.
And using the after hours as an example, people have no problem showing up at 5:30.
Say that again?
At the chamber after
Oh, yeah.
hours, people have no problem
That's a
showing
great
up
point.
at
Yeah.
5:30.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
5:30 is a good time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so 5:30 on January 9th.
If we serve food, we'll get twice as many people.
I'll bake cookies.
You bake cookies? Sure. Good.
Maybe we can get Jim Bushnell to make popcorn.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do 266 cookies of it. But maybe.
I think I would like to see if you guys are amiable to it, Jeremy and Jody, to present on the expenditures that we've had so far.
It'd be neat if you did it, like Jeremy, you brought in the information like Wes Nelson presented. To kind of, instead of just black and white numbers and percentages, show some of the good that's come.
Some pictures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I was thinking about pictures too, making these slides, that it'd be nice to have some of the slides.
And then at that point, we could absolutely say that as of whatever year, when we had a different auditor come in, these things were no longer eligible to be spent on.
Right, and show
And-
things
and
that
so,
happened
you know.
with the parks and how the trail system. was
Right, and now we have no money to
longer
maintain
can
all
do
of
that.
these parks that we have.
We can no longer maintain the pool.
Yeah, and we can no longer maintain the parks.
Okay. Well, it'll be illustrative of how we dial in the flexibility.
Right,
Mhm.
So that needs to be the future, that seems pretty obvious from the surveillance problem.
when did that audit happen, was it 2017 or 18?
But this is our second budget, where those changes took effect. So it was about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, was probably when the audit happened.
The one that opened our eyes to what, in their opinion, we were doing wrong.
Correct.
Or, yeah, in that audit. Okay. And how many audits have we had before then? 23?
Since
20,
'99, so,
20 audits altogether then.
yeah.
So 18 audits said we were doing okay, and then,
Two years.
From two different auditors.
Yeah, two separate auditing companies.
Yeah.
This is the third auditing company that we've had, and it's the first one that did this.
do you want us to talk about that then, during that? Because that directly affects the expenditures part of it. Or James, do you wanna talk about that part of it, or?
I think it would be, so I'm gonna suggest, it's nothing personal against either Gloria or James, I'm gonna suggest that you guys not do the presentations.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree,
I
because,
Because some people would presume we're supporting the city regardless of whether they were right or wrong.
You got it. That's correct. I think it's important that we do this piece.
Mhm.
And then maybe just to divide it up, then, if, I'm just trying to look at how we can do this, is that maybe Tim and I do the survey results, and then Colleen, if you're acceptable to it, having you do that, kind of what does it look like without the resort tax and some of that resort tax informational stuff.
And there, you could absolutely bring up the fact that it's over 50% of the city's budget right now.
Yeah.
And the needs will still be there with or without the resort
And,
tax.
and then James, you can help Colleen kind of put some of that stuff together.
okay. Mhm.
And I think we have some of it, kind of lined out, but not.
And you and Tim were gonna do what?
We'll do the survey results.
Survey results, yeah.
Colleen, what does it look like without resort tax, is that?
Yes,
Okay.
right.
And I'm happy since I'm chairing, I can do the kind of MC work.
And step in with answers to some
Yeah,
questions.
make some
and
stuff
like
up,
that.
just.
And Jody and, Jeremy are gonna.
Try not to argue with the audience.
Presentation, the expenditures. yeah, the major-
Expenditures, okay.
The new resort tax, 1%?
Who wants to explain that?
The 1%?
Yeah.
Yeah. That should be a fairly quick one.
Well, maybe, could we put those two together, the ones that James and I are gonna work on without
we-
the resort tax?
Yeah,
and
what it
then-
looks like without the resort
The
tax
opposite side
and what it would look like with, with the 1%, what we would be able
Well,
to.
If we
Yeah.
paint a bad
Yeah.
enough picture
Yeah.
about what would it be without
Yeah.
the resort
Yeah.
tax, then we can slide in the extra
Yeah.
1% and.
Mhm.
Sure.
And I think I would do that after the survey results. I think I would do the 1% and what it would look like, because one of the things, and here's what I would rest your laurels on in painting this picture, is that people say they like the resort tax. Like, that's what our survey results show. So we have to go into this meeting with that as our premise, right? That, we have to trust these results. And we need to not argue against the, the idea that people aren't gonna want the resort tax. The reality is what, and this is why we did the survey, is our survey shows that people want this resort tax. And so that's how we're going into this meeting. We're gonna present, what it's done, basically what this, what we've spent it on. We're gonna talk about, how people, feel about it, and then we'll talk about kind of that, 1%, I would say, what does it look like without the resort tax? Just as a quick thing. Maybe let's put the what does it look like without the resort tax above the survey results.
Right.
And then that way we move people around a little bit.
For the 1%, what I would do absolutely would be to go to these comments and see what the pet projects are that people want it spent on. And explain that, we had overwhelming support for a city pool, for stormwater drains, for better sidewalks. And that 1% is exactly what that can be used for.
And, the comments don't necessarily say that. I mean, there's a bunch about the pool, and the two things that you see in the comments are pools and streets.
Yes. And there was the stormwater, someone.
Yeah, someone mentioned it, but it was not an overwhelming in the comment. But it is, it's overwhelming in the rankings, the streets and sidewalks, and then upgrading infrastructure, which is, again, that's, I think for a lot of people, that's streets and sidewalks and, water and sewer and some of those kinds of things.
And when they first came out with that 1%, they said it had to be project oriented.
Yes, it has to be.
Yeah, and so streets are not a project, it's an ongoing thing.
Well, it could be. You could have a project to repave Platthagen and
But
Dillard.
that's an ongoing thing, that's not a project that once it's completed, then it's finished.
Well, it could be, yes, it could be a project. You could rebuild the whole street from the ground up, and that could be the project. It would.
That's a
believe
little bit of a stretch.
I believe it is okay now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's
West
okay.
Yellowstone
That's
did
a,
that.
that's a good,
But now, like, stormwater is a project, it's,
Yeah.
The pool is a project.
yes,
And
Here's so.
putting sidewalks on 19th Street would be. a
Let's
project.
make sure we're finished this, and then we'll talk about rankings for a second. But so I think, then we go into the survey, and then, additional questions on what people support, then ongoing resort tax board. So one of the thoughts is that, there is some skepticism within the community about whether the council is ensuring the proper use of the resort tax. And I would maybe propose that what we propose is that there is a resort tax advisory board like this that, convenes once or twice a year and reviews the resort tax expenditures and the incomes and ensures that the council is following what the community wants.
and it should follow an audit. So that if there's any changes, then they can say what the changes should be.
Yep.
And the ongoing resort tax board can bring that up.
And they can also recommend the new budget to
Yeah.
the council,
Yeah.
They can help.
Are you saying that this board should be?
I would say it was this board, but it could get reappointed. It would be but it would be
You
a
have like
citizen,
2-year term
it'd be a
or something like
citizen,
that.
the same kind of, with, citizens and business owners and,
Right.
that it would be a mix of
10%.
folks.
Yeah, and I think that's right, because Tom, some people are uncomfortable coming to the council, but they might come to a resort
Yeah.
tax board with a question or a suggestion.
Mhm.
And-
I think that would take some heat off the council too. Let people come and vent in a more,
But
Casual
then the
place.
board can report to the council if if the individual doesn't want to for some reason.
Yeah, that's correct.
But that would be up to the board to report to the council, keep the council informed as to what people were thinking.
Well, it'll maintain some continuity with shifting council.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah.
that's a great point.
And
Yeah.
you could actually meet once a month or once every 2 months.
Or
Yeah.
once
So
a
they-
quarter.
Well,
once a quarter,
yeah,
yeah.
and then-
Once a quarter.
And then I think the other thing that they would maybe be responsible for is ongoing education.
And that's, when
Right.
Lori said every quarter, there was one comment in there that there should be a report every quarter of what the income was. There is.
Yeah.
But nobody knows,
And it's
unless
posted
you
on the
pay attention,
website,
You can go download it on the website. So if you met quarterly and then
And have
Put
that
it
part
in.
of your meeting.
have a part of the meeting, put it in the newspaper,
Mhm.
and it's a known thing.
Yep.
That here
And on
it
the
is,
city
and we took a look
website,
at it,
yeah.
we took a look at it, this was the income and expense and expenditures.
Yep.
For that quarter, and everything
And-
is there.
And Tim, too, if the state changes the rules, as they frequently will do, that can also be a part of what the board looks at and
Yeah, legislative
brings
changes.
it to the
Right,
council and makes a report to the public.
I think that's a great idea.
And then if you need to, you know something's coming before legislature and you want to have a letter writing campaign, you know, they're gonna do away with it, or they're gonna change it significantly that would negatively affect us, you know, those people could let everybody know so that they can
Yeah,
contact their representatives and
and
say,
that would be better coming from the
or
board.
yes, do this, don't do that, this type of thing.
Is this idea something we would wanna put on a phase 2 survey? Do we wanna do a phase 2 survey? I would imagine
I think we might wanna do, I think some of it, we'll see how well this live survey works at the public meeting too. But we, you know, maybe, you know, we may wanna do a phase 2 survey if we feel like we need more information, you know.
Yeah,
Because
based on
we
what
think
comes
we-
up.
we think the board's a good idea, an ongoing board, but it might be good to ask the question.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things we can do is we can ask that question at the public meeting, and you know, if, based on that information, they'll tell you if people think it's a good idea or not a good idea.
Well, then, yeah, I mean, again, a board like that could look at, is our education working? Do we need to update our workbook?
Yeah,
Well, we could always have a representative go to, you know, the chamber board meeting or the business alliance meeting and actually do a presentation,
Yeah.
you know, after these are taxed, you know, if you have any,
And take,
please contact, you know, so and so
and a
to
comment
questions.
from one person that, I've got my new Tom, I always go to Tom and ask him if I have a crazy idea. And this person said that just, you know, the more transparency at this point, the better it's going to be.
Yeah.
So the more we go to a meeting, and say, this is it, you're here, ask.
yeah.
Having
What do you want
traveling
us to do?
resort tax audit board members makes more sense than having meetings that you expect people to come to.
Yeah.
If, like they said, like you said, if we go to them
Yeah.
and say, okay, what are your questions?
Yeah.
You
Well, there's a
know,
can
lot
we
of
do better?
groups
Yeah.
in town that have meetings that have a lot of members, and if we just get on their agenda and go and start talking to them.
Yeah, here's what the resort tax is doing for us, yeah. And I think there's been some assumption that people understood, you know, when we put in all new water lines, that that's what the money was being spent on, but I think sometimes people didn't really understand that.
That it was a 20-year payback and it wasn't paid for the first year.
Yeah,
Or a 20,
Yeah.
30-year payback, and we're still paying for those initial projects.
One- Think, if we're at the point, I'd like to see something added to the agenda, how do we increase it? Strategies to increase the income.
yeah,
That, without increasing the percentage. You know, more people every time. I mean, I would be happy to kind of spearhead and talk to that one.
I think that'd be great. That was reflected in the comments as well. I mean, there were more than a couple comments that said that, you know, that basically the resort tax is for tourists and you need to increase tourism and you need to provide services for tourists.
Right. And there was also, though, some comments about we should only have resort tax during certain times of the year, not have it.
There was
Children's
one comment, I think. about
Yeah, I
that,
didn't see that one. But I did also notice though that in the survey results, having funding available to bring big events into town was very low.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't, you know, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was not,
That
you know,
was like,
the
no,
thing,
basically.
I kind of grouped, when I did the ranking thing, I kind of grouped them. I have to remember how I calculated this, but I believe I calculated 3.5 was, if you were below 3.5, it was 50% below in terms of positive, you know, basically, if it was more than 3.5, more than 50% of people believed it was positive.
It was 2.8 local event funding and grants.
Yeah, yes, that was the lowest, the absolute lowest thing. You know, local events, city services, city buildings, marketing, police, property tax relief, and workforce housing, where the,
And just to kind of speak to that, what my goal would be is building a better town. You know, spending the money, that we would have the parks, that we would have a pool, we would be very enticing. And I think it was Teresa, you said at one of the meetings, that more concentration on above ground, what people can see rather than,
Yeah, it's just as
'cause it's
important as what's
important,
below
yeah.
ground.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's the type of thing that will bring more visitors. And what I really love about that strategy is it also makes it better for all of us to live here. Every one of those things that you do, it's just win-win-win. And so that would be, if that's the direction I would talk. Not so much,
Marketing
no.
or doing funding for events or.
No, it's the
Absolutely.
idea that, you know, that's where that really pushing on that tourism infrastructure. You know, the type of things, I mean, there's infrastructure that you need. I mean, you've gotta have your streets, you gotta have water, I mean, and I've said this to a council person, it's like, I'm happy to sit on this until we have streets and water. But it's something that needs to be done as well, because that the more visitors we get, the more money. I mean, we are at a limit to what we can raise from the locals. So it's like, bring it
Unless you
in.
increase what we're taxing, and we're not addressing that now.
Yeah, and you know, and another strategy that we've been using, and talk about the fact that the TV and CDB are very involved in this. Another strategy we've been working is we're not giving up on summer, we're not stopping summer, but we're not solely focused on summer. We did low hanging fruit first, we're just thinking a smart way to go, but really dealing with the shoulder seasons, what does it take to get somebody here in the year round? You know, that's the type, I mean, you have to build, every town survives on economy.
Well, that summer when the highway didn't open, you know, we were caught,
that's huge.
we were absolutely caught scrambling, trying to get people here during the summer without the Beartooth Highway. And if that ever happens again, we want people to come here for Red Lodge
Yeah.
too, not just
That's,
because
that's,
we're gateway
that's another part of
to,
the strategy, yeah,
I mean, we're Red Lodge, we're
Yeah.
cool, come here.
That's why I say the pool, if we have a pool and it's built to specifications that will allow sanctioned meets to be held here, then that brings people in, and they'll stay and eat and everything. But it also is a perk for people who live here.
That idea has pretty much been killed as of the last couple of days though, after there was some evaluation of those type of pools and how much they cost.
Oh.
The school pretty much said we can't partner with the city on that one. So I think we're just gonna look to rehab and rebuild the current pool.
So if that, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think regardless of where the road we drive down for the pool, you know, I think what was clear in the survey is that streets and sidewalks, city infrastructure, stormwater, parks and trails, tourism infrastructure, and community pool are, you know, that's what people want. I mean, that's, you know, there's no question there. And then you're followed pretty closely by snow plowing and some water and sewer rate support. Now, you know, the one thing that we know that I don't think a lot of people know is that we're pretty well committed to $250,000 a year for, you know, water rate support as it is, and that's what we would lose if that, you know, so that's going to exist there as a 25% mark probably for the next, I don't know, how many more years do we have left on that?
I think like 23 or so.
Yeah. So that's going to be a big thing, but you know, what that says is that, you know, probably we shouldn't be investing much more in than that in sewer and water system stuff, you know, but what I would say is that number 2 is upgrade infrastructure to allow for growth and development. Sometimes that's water and sewer systems.
Yeah.
You know, so there's definitely, you know, the things that, you know, while there was some pushback, as we all knew, over the inclusion of community service such as food bank and library and recycling, from the food bank, the reality is that actually ranked relatively high as well.
But I don't think the city, I mean, the citizens of Rutledge do not wanna lose the recycling center, hence the
No.
support that they've given it.
Yep.
To keep it open.
Yep.
You know, so that's very important, and if something like that could get some extra funding from the resort tax, cause the tourists use that as well. You know,
Yeah.
We get a lot of garbage in our town in the summer, extra garbage, so
Yes.
being able to recycle some of that is huge for people.
Yeah, so I think that those are, those are important things. Fire and EMS services and economic development, a little bit more on the borderline of the positive versus negative. But still relatively positive. It's interesting in looking at this notes to see the things that had bigger positives and things that had bigger middles, right? Like, bigger like fives and some things that have, bigger middles, like snow plowing, which, ranked relatively high, had the exact same 20% as fire and EMS or community services, but snow plowing had a lot of people that rated it number 4. So.
And of course, a lot of people don't know that the city doesn't plow Broadway, that's the county.
Yeah. The state does
Sorry,
that.
I misspoke there, it's the state.
Yeah. But I think, this is my personal opinion. It's hard to go wrong with good snow plowing in a community. I mean, that's, generally people are not gonna complain if you have good snow plowing.
Based on some of the comments, might have been the fact that we put the word drivers in there.
Yeah.
Probably.
A little bit, but it's still pretty high.
Yeah.
I think that the equipment is definitely there, but I think some of the thing is that, is there an operational expense of snow plowing, and does that make sense to spend resort tax on some, again,
Do you want it just from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, or are you gonna pay some overtime and do the weekends?
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and
like,
and again, look at what is number 1, is streets and sidewalks. Everybody is adamant on streets and sidewalks, and streets and sidewalks are not particularly useful if they're covered in snow.
That's true.
So when you look at that and you say, how does this come together, it kind of begins to make sense. But I think one of the things that what we built is this idea that, or at least what I see, is that, people believe in certain things. They don't want it to morph into some other things like, city general expenses, but they want good streets, they want good parks. They want tourism infrastructure, things that help bring tourists here and make our community look good. They want to see the results of what the money's being spent on.
Yeah. And I think one thing that you hit on, it's the big things, something that they actually can see and experience.
Yeah.
Dumping it into the general fund is a tough.
It is, and I think that, I think you wanna be very specific in what it's being spent on.
Yeah, and then, and if those things are being taken care of, then it opens up general fund money to take care of some of the things that they don't want the resort tax for. I don't see because they don't want the resort tax to be spent on police, I don't necessarily see their budget going down because of that.
Well, that's just
Decision.
that if you take the police and so many people, we're already getting a lot of the influx from Billings as far as crime goes. You see that with vehicles being stolen, you see that with contractors' trailers being stolen. People, we're easy pickings up here because we're not used to that. Down in Billings, every day there's a car stolen.
Yeah, my keys are in my truck in front of my house right now.
Yeah, so why do you
It's only been
suppose,
stolen, it was borrowed.
But once that really starts hitting, if we didn't have the police coverage that we do, and we're getting back that, from the county too, the county helps, they're both there. But if we didn't have what we do, it would be, I think people would be screaming.
But why do you think that the police and the fire rated so low here? I mean,
here would be my guess, is that, people see that as, the general operational fund. Now, I'll tell you, in the other communities that have resort tax, they spend a lot of their resort tax on emergency services, police, fire, EMS. And for good reason, is that the tourism, increases that activity, it just does. But our folks feel like that's not the appropriate place for the money. I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, and maybe that's an educational thing, but and whether we like it or not, right now, there's definitely the police have a bad rap in our community.
There's been 5 years of bad press.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not our current one, it's a holdover from.
I think it's a lot of holdover from the past. I would agree with that, and it's,
None of us get over that easily.
no, we don't.
And when a prior police chief was here and some new cars were purchased, the old ones were washed and everybody thought they were new.
well, they were renumbered,
Yes, and they had
Repainted,
new
yeah.
signage and everything, so people thought they were all new.
Yeah.
And we still can't convince them otherwise.
And the reality is, like, right now, we cannot buy police vehicles through our general fund. And we do not have enough general fund to take police vehicles out of resort tax.
And interestingly enough, we have not spent, really any money at all on firing EMS. There was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
some money to,
percentage is so
some money
low,
to
it's
fix
almost
fix a ladder truck in, like almost nothing several years ago. But the reality is that, so that's
And they
just,
do see the line item on the property taxes for the
So-
district, the ambulance district.
So-
And I think they get kind of confused about what
that funds.
that funds.
Yeah.
They
So-
think that's your whole budget.
In this instance, then, do we just take that they don't want it and just let it go at that? Or do we try to do, like Tom said, the education, because that, and somebody that's a fire chief could maybe talk to that, the importance that, of a town, we are not a town of 2,500 people.
I think, I honestly think that you have priorities, and I think the priorities are clear here, but I think really what's come down to this is that we have a pretty clear impression of how an ordinance can be written, and then ultimately it's gonna be up to the council. And that's why I think a resort tax review, it's up to the council to decide how to do that. And, right now, I think, the council probably doesn't wanna spend money on that, or they're gonna have to make those decisions, right? With the input from the public. And I think that that's really what's important is that allowing this, the big question for us really as a committee was, do people want to have a resort tax, right? And to me, in talking to people, seeing the survey, I think the answer to that question is people do want a resort tax. Overall, generally, people want a resort tax. They're not gonna be able to absorb the kind of things that the resort tax is paid for without the resort tax. And then there's some guidance here for the council on what people want and how it should be spent. And it's
Produce
pretty-
an ordinance
and
that
it's
allows for that.
and it has to allow for these kinds of things, and it's
Yeah.
pretty clear that people want, so one thing that's not, there's some things here that are very clear that people want that are not currently allowed, and I think, park and trail construction and maintenance was very clear. And I think tourism infrastructure such as, beautification, weed spraying, flags, flowers, fireworks, wayfinding, downtown speakers, people want that, they want stuff like that.
Something we might highlight in the meeting is lines like that, what is not allowed currently.
Yes,
That,
Yeah.
right
Ranked
next to,
high, yes.
right next to our
Right.
high ranking things
Yeah.
that we do want as
Yeah.
a result of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's a really good idea.
And then we can be, this needs to be changed to.
Well, and one of the things that Jim Bushnell will tell you is that stormwater improvements is really about street and sidewalks.
Mhm.
That,
Yeah, cause you do the stormwater, then you can rebuild the streets.
yeah,
Put it
and,
in
so
there.
that's gonna be the process of getting the streets done is, is building, you know, putting in the stormwater, then rebuilding the streets, and we've got our water lines in, you know, so we probably need to look at sewer a little bit as we do that, so we don't end up with a case where we have to rebuild streets again.
When we talked about not being in the business of saying where the money should be spent, that's a great argument for that 1%.
Yeah.
And whether it's just as a comment, even, like stormwater would be a project.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And, but if putting these sidewalks in places where there aren't sidewalks would be a project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of places, I mean, it's not that they're bad sidewalks, there's just no
Well,
sidewalks.
some places are bad.
Yeah, some places are bad
Some
too,
places are
but
bad.
like I say, I mean, 19th Street, there are absolutely no sidewalks on 19th Street.
The thing about the streets is with our weather conditions, we're always, it's an ongoing thing constantly. It's never just fix it, it stays fixed like some things. I wanna have one comment on the downtown speakers. Those downtown speakers never belonged to the city.
No, they didn't, but at the same time, people want them.
No,
So,
let me finish. Okay. They belong to the parade committee who paid for the original speakers. And then this last, several people, the deep pocket people gave me money to buy the new speakers when some people took the old ones down, even though I begged them not to and told them that they didn't belong to them, they belonged to the parade. So they took it down anyhow. However, we had a meeting, our last council meeting, and the people from, Northwestern were here, and the gal told me that they're gonna work on those speakers. They think it might be partly an electrical problem, and she said, we're gonna see what we can do to make them work better. And I
Wow.
said, oh, thank you, Lord,
wow,
because that would sure be swell. I know that they're wanted.
yeah.
And I know that they are
absolutely
useful, not just for fun, but for good things.
Yes.
I even went to the county and asked them if some of their emergency services money could be spent for speakers, and they said, oh, no. So, and this was a while back when I asked them that, but, if Northwestern can do something with the system and make it work better with the equipment we have, that's a step in the right direction. I just want, that's not for publication yet until we know if it's gonna help. But I thought because of all the things that we're discussing, that you guys should know
Right.
that Northwestern is gonna try to work on, which I think is just absolutely wonderful for them. Don't you think that's?
Absolutely. Yeah, I wanted to add one thing on streets too, and Jody, Jeremy, you guys might wanna touch on this, and if you want more detail, come and see me, but all the streets and sidewalks were done by an SID over 100 years ago. And those SIDs were for 20 years. The SIDs expired. People decided, hey, tax me because I want a paved street, I want sidewalk. So the city did those SIDs, and once those SIDs were no longer in place, what the city probably should have done is create street maintenance districts, but they did not. So there's kind of a general sense from the public, I think, that the city should just take care of streets, but the city did not pay for the streets originally, and there was never a funding mechanism put in place for maintenance and rebuilding them. And so now we have a little bit of resort tax money for it, a tiny bit of gas tax for it, but we still never have that, dedicated money to streets, which, that should have happened 80 years ago.
Good historical point of context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's pretty good.
So, we're running out of time.
One other thing I'd like to go in, I do have some slides on West Yellowstone, Whitefish, how they spend their property or their resort tax monies, Big Sky. So I don't know if that's something anybody wants to present on, but that's something we could add to the agenda too. Just go over for maybe 10 minutes on how other communities are doing it.
I think we absolutely should, because I think people have it set in their mind that it only should be for this, but other communities absolutely do spend it on other things. And maybe it'll kind of open their eyes a little bit, it's like, oh, okay. it's not out of the realm of possibilities to use this money for some other things.
Well, and relative to us, you know, a lot of those are fairly extremely flexible. So
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
worth highlighting that that's not unprecedented.
And I think it's worth listing some of the really small towns too. That, because those are the ones that are definitely spending, I mean, it's the only way they have emergency services is the resort tax. And highlighting, that was interesting to me, and I would think it would be to other people. It's like, we're not, this isn't a Red Lodge thing. There's small towns, smaller towns, and much bigger towns.
But it's, everybody, I mean, you want them there right away when you need them. And,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you don't,
Yeah.
I've listened to the scanner before and heard some calls in other communities where it's crickets when the page comes out. And we're very lucky that we get immediate service here,
Boy, I'll say,
you know.
saves lives.
So I think there's a couple of questions that we need to figure out is, how are we gonna put this all together? You know, I really feel it's critical that we have a good, well-presented, cohesive presentation. I think we need to, I think we probably need to practice a little bit. I think we need to, make it look pretty. Nothing against your slides, there's lots of good information, but obviously there's way too much little writing on them to be useful. And so we need to, really kind of think about what points we want to make and how to make those points.
And make it as simple as possible.
Yes.
And present a united front.
And I will work on this thing that polls people and how that works, and then I will get possibilities. Yes. So do we want to meet again a couple times between us? So we're basically a month, and we have Christmas in the middle of there. So we've got a holiday.
I would say definitely yes before the thing.
Yeah. Maybe twice.
Yeah, twice.
Yeah, twice sure, but at least once.
What about, I don't know, there's park sport.
Those Wednesdays are both Christmas and New Year's.
The week of the December 16th for one?
Could do something.
I'm gone.
Wednesday night in 2 weeks there'll be a park sport, so we can't do it that night.
I mean, Mondays always work great for me, but.
Yeah, I mean, I can be a little flexible. We need to. Although.
Yeah, we're kind of down, there's, Christmas is the week of the 23rd through the 27th, and then New Year's is the 30th through the 3rd, so we're kind of down to the 16th through the 20th, and then to the 13th. Next
Well,
2 weeks.
how about we do this? Why don't, let's not schedule something right now. And what I'd like to do is over the next week, like if you two can get together to do your part and you and James can get together and Tim and I can get, so we can spend the kind of the next, try to get our pieces put together, and then we can all come together with, hey, this is what we're thinking, and then we can tweak some of that. What do you guys think about that idea?
Sounds great, except that I'm gone from the 7th to the 22nd, so I'm no good to anybody
Okay.
during that time.
Well, so tomorrow or Friday?
Friday is, I'm up to my eyeballs with the stroll at the lodge.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, this Friday and Saturday in the stroll.
I could do tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, I have a 2 o'clock. I don't know how long it's gonna go. I'll call you when it's done. It might be 3:34,
Okay.
so we might be kind of limited, but.
What about that week in between Christmas and New Year's?
That's fine with me.
You mean like the 26th or something like that?
Yeah.
The day after Christmas?
Like, what about a noon meeting that day?
Or on the 30th? January 30th or January 2nd?
Everybody's gonna be here?
Any of the
Whatever
states are
happened
fine with me.
earlier than pushing too close to it in case we need to.
Well, we'll definitely.
Yeah, that's what I would say, is if we could do like the 26th at noon, I mean, I hate to do a meeting the day after Christmas, but
Who that lives in Red Lodge gets to celebrate Christmas?
yeah.
I grew up in the grocery business and convenience stores, and we worked on Christmas. It's been over a month.
I mean, I have to work that day, so.
Okay.
Unless we do it.
I could do a night meeting that night,
On Thursday night.
Thursday, yeah,
What, which Thursday?
Thursday the 26th.
Yeah, I can do that.
My family's gonna revolt against me, but that's okay.
Are you talking about everybody, Tom?
Yes, yeah, that would be for everybody.
Okay, Thursday the 19th?
Yeah.
26th.
No, the 26th.
Oh, the 26th.
At 5:30.
And then, so the meeting's on the 9th, should we have our normal meeting on the 8th, so we can fine tune anything?
Yes, I think that would be good.
The day before, that's how it can be.
That would probably be excellent.
Yeah, hopefully, maybe we can just meet at the old Roosevelt that night and
Yeah,
get a trial run.
That's a good idea.
yeah,
That's Wednesday, January 8th.
yeah.
Do we have,
At 5:30, excuse me, Jen.
That's fine.
5:30?
Yes.
At the Roosevelt Center.
What day was this?
The 8th.
Wednesday, the 8th.
The 8th of January.
Yes, at 5:30 at Roosevelt.
Will be our dress rehearsal.
Anybody have,
5:30 at Roosevelt.
you know, I'm expecting maybe 100 people, 150 maybe. Does
That's
anybody
about
have?
right.
Yeah.
I would say 100. I mean, we had 170 people say they would show up, but my guess is they won't.
Mhm.
Unless we bring food,
Yeah.
Jeremy's cookies.
yeah.
We could take some pictures and put it on Facebook and
There
say,
you go.
come to the meeting.
Bribery.
Bribery, yeah.
Were we gonna have a shared drive? I know we discussed that like a few.
Yeah, we did discuss that. I was wondering about that.
That might be nice for assembling pieces.
I was trying to put one together and
Yeah.
I don't know what my issue was. And,
I will build one and invite everybody to it.
okay.
Okay.
That's what now?
Shared
A
drive.
Google
So we
share
have-
drive.
So we have all of our docs out
Yeah.
there.
Oh, I
on it,
see.
So we can
Okay.
access it all, and so it'll be there, so the next time there's a resort text group formed, all those docs will be out there too.
Great idea.
I have to go back and do it.
Don't save every random JPEG in a huge rat's nest of.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as we don't do that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so Jeremy, when did you wanna get together?
Mondays or weekends work the best.
Okay, I
But-
can't do Saturday, but I can do Sunday, so, and I can't do this Sunday,
I can either have parents.
so.
So
I could do the, or I could do, what was your other thing? Monday?
Mondays are great.
Okay, yeah, I can do Monday nights too. Monday, I can do it. So probably be better for the weekend.
James, do you wanna have a backup to us
Yeah.
for tomorrow? Another time after that?
Do you work on Monday?
No, I have the day off.
Oh, you have your day off,
You
okay.
and I should meet at noon at
That's why I
one of the
did it.
restaurants,
We
like I
could
was doing with Neil
absolutely
instead
meet like at
of, instead of
11:30
saying,
or
Tom said
something.
invite me to lunch, I'll
it's,
say,
the
Neil
14th.
said
If
invite me to lunch.
yeah, that sounds fair. Yeah, we can do that. That sounds good. I'm making sure I have all these in my
Really?
calendar here, 'cause I don't wanna be confused.
So you'll call me for tomorrow afternoon, and then do you wanna do another time after that in case we need it?
You'll be gone.
I'm gone I leave Saturday and I come back on the 22nd.
Let's just.
I had a, I don't know if I said this to you, I had a point on the 1%.
Thanks,
That's
Teresa.
1%, that's right.
Aye, thank you.
Although I don't think
So
that's,
we-
I
let's-
don't think that's counting the property tax, the 5% and the 1%.
No, that would be the total, that 1% of the. And then, the expenditure come up with that and some increasing.
So the 1% represents 283,000.
I came up with
Based
a
off
lower,
850,000.
yeah, I came up with a lower number, because I did it off of, and I'll have to recheck
Even a
that.
lower number is gonna
So, Tom,
be impressive, and it's
I've
something
got,
that, when you see
January
it,
the eighth and
it
January.
didn't register with me,
What was
the
the other one?
1%.
January the 9th is the public meeting.
Yes,
Yeah,
You can do a lot with that.
that's a good piece of change, $283,000.
The twen-
$333.
We said the
See, I did it
26th,
off of that 705.
of,
and it was
December.
A little over
Of December,
200, but
yes.
not much.
okay,
It was like 205,000.
Do I have you?
and that's 5:30 here, and the other one is
515.
Yes,
5:30 at
down there, you
Roosevelt.
got it, yep.
Okay,
Was what I said.
No, I don't even have you in here. Let me, what number can I reach you at?
See if I can get a high school kid to put together a good presentation.
and Tom, when I do the report to the city council at our next meeting, I'll be very discreet,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, as a general rule, I mean, these numbers are not secretive, but they're not for public. We want people to come to the public meeting to hear these results, so, please don't distribute them ahead of
No,
that,
no.
I mean, it's not like, you can't say streets ranked really high, I don't have a problem with that, but as a general rule,
I'll be very.
yeah, they can watch that and see, but, what we want is folks to come to the public meeting so they can get this information and they can participate. That's really, we want this to be a public participatory process. That's what's so important. That's what people at least say that they haven't had, and so we wanna make sure that that really is what they get. People get a chance to talk, they get a chance to tell us what, and like I said, I think we've gotten a lot of really good feedback from this survey. I mean,
Oh, yeah, it's incredible.
One, I
Well, the
assume.
whole purpose of, keep interrupting.
No, it's fine, go ahead.
The whole purpose of the meeting, the public meeting, is for us to listen to them.
yes, exactly. That's exactly correct.
Do we wanna talk about at the public meeting, like moving forward, as far as, keeping a resort tax board, the possibility of keeping that resort tax board going, how would people? feel
Yeah, I mean,
about
we
that?
have to talk about how that runs into the ordinance, whether
Right.
that's
Because it would
actually
have to
in
be-
ordinance or, or whether it's the council's decision to do that,
Could be done by resolution like this one.
It could be done by resolution as well, yeah.
What does it say in the resolution, I haven't read it recently, that created this board as to the length of our term?
Until it passes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Until the
okay.
result.
Yeah.
So it could be.
That's why we want, the reality is that, at least I am hopeful that we are not going to overanalyze this and that we will look to get it onto a ballot very soon. Mail ballots are get the most response, so I would recommend a mail ballot. The secondary to that would be a general election ballot next November, but, I think I would look for a mail ballot sooner rather than later to.
Could we do it by April? Can you do what, with our,
I think it'd probably be too late to do in the spring.
okay,
I think we
is
can-
it?
Well, you can do a mail ballot at any time,
Oh, it's more expensive, yeah. I'll go to the county and get some details.
yeah, but it's probably a worthwhile expenditure.
Yeah.
You're saying do it during the primary?
Get it added to the primary?
Find out what the dates on the primary, what the date would have to be to have it on the primary election.
I mean, and if we feel that it's gonna help pass it, to have a resort tax board have some oversight on it, that will help
That might
public
be an-
incentive
Uh-huh.
to get that passed, then, there wouldn't be any reason why you wouldn't include that as part of the ballot.
Now, what were you gonna say when I interrupted you?
Basically,
last
what you
I
were
think
gonna
it'd
say,
be
actually.
helpful.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you said it.
That seems to be their main concern, is that there's no oversight, except for this 1 year, yearly audit.
Yeah, that might, you're correct, that might be a sellable point
Mhm.
for those. Now, there's some people, based on these comments, there's some people that no length of meeting or nothing is gonna.
Oh, and that's okay. I mean, we respect their opinion to not like the resort tax. That is their right to not like it. It's their right to think it's wrong. It's their right to say they don't wanna have it. That's, I mean,
And we
but,
can,
and had that come up in the survey and said that was 80% of the people thought that way, we would be having a very different
Yeah,
conversation
we would.
here.
and not gonna build a presentation to the top 1% or the bottom.
No.
No. But I would love to get this
That bulk in the middle.
voted on ASAP. I mean,
But for the people that have a tipping point, that,
We need.
ongoing audit, board.
An
resort
oversight.
tax
Yeah.
oversight
And that's
might-
what we
With
really
the
need to
responsibilities
listen
are to
those
make sure
comments.
education is
So
out there and-
That might be their
And
tipping
the whole-
point.
That tipping point, because that's the places where there are shortcomings, there always is.
yeah.
Nothing's perfect.
Well, and it always changes every time you get a different council,
Yeah.
on their priorities and.
Yeah, Jeremy made that point, that's what the
Absolutely,
board,
so,
the board coming in.
Continuity
To
would be
make
great.
absolutely. So I guess if you wanna bring that up at a work session or something like that we'd like to get it, on
A
a
permanent resort tax board.
board and get it on the ballot
Mhm.
as soon as possible, if it's the primary election in April, you should get a decent turnout for that if you can still get it, the language approved and on it.
Mhm.
Let's make sure that gets.
That's gonna be tight, I will
That's
tell you
pretty
that.
soon, yeah.
It's really soon.
It is
So,
really soon.
Is it
And I don't
April or
think-
June? When is
we'd
that?
have to have something put together, like, let's say we even got it put together right after the meeting, but then it's gonna have to go to the council for approval, and so say that could happen at the first council meeting. Is the first council meeting, is the real meeting or the second one?
The first one's the real
The
one.
first
so
was
it'll be February.
So it'd be the first meeting in
Well,
February.
it's June 2nd is our primary.
Okay, so,
Maybe.
so
Yeah,
then that's
It's not
doable.
April. That's why we never really get to pick a presidential
Yeah, we don't
candidate.
get to
It's like,
It's
it's
all
already
done-
picked.
It's all done by then.
It's all done. It's like,
James, let's make sure that comes
Yeah,
up.
June 2nd actually might be reasonable.
We can just talk about it.
Yeah, I'll go talk to Mackie over at the county tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
And see what the deadlines are.
Yeah, okay.
I'll let you guys
Yeah.
know tomorrow.
I just,
Find out.
the sooner the better, the less, it'll be more straightforward.
Yeah, I mean,
less, more
initially, my thought
noise and-
was, yeah, we need more time, that we need to sell it more and do more outreach, but based off the survey, people are more on board than we expected, so.
Well, and we have an idea of what they are interested in now, it's really pretty clear.
Did we talk about how long each section? I could put together.
I know, you could talk for an hour.
infrastructure one, yeah, so if you say, it's gonna be 5 minutes.
I think if you think about the entire thing is that we shouldn't be much more than an hour. So,
We want public
And you gotta have
comment.
public comment.
and I'm adding in the public comment in addition to that, so, that's a half an hour of public
That means our
comment.
presentation's gonna have to
That'd
be,
like 5 minutes.
stand up and introduce yourself and say, do you have any questions?
Yeah. No, I think we want to, more than that, obviously, but yeah, I would not plan to talk for 45
I
minutes.
can,
No.
I can bullet point without adding flour.
Yes,
To the point.
yeah, I think we need to be quick and to the
You
point.
don't wanna
The
lose
kiss,
people.
the kiss method.
Yeah.
Okay, that actually makes it a lot simpler.
Which makes
Sure.
sense if listenings are,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
if listening's at the top of our list.
Yeah, and I think that's what, I will work on that
You're
survey
right.
thing so that we can, submit feedback from the audience. I mean, I think we really want to know what people think.
I
It is, I
agree.
mean, that is one of the things, if not in this survey, that I've heard over and over again at city council meetings, bar stools, Red Lodge debate, everywhere.
Well, and
People wanna be heard.
we also need to decide if we're going to just do the 3% now, or are we gonna do both now?
Yep,
Because that will make a difference.
that's an important survey question.
Yeah, I wish
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I don't. I was gonna say, I wish we asked about the 1% of the survey, but I don't.
I don't know that people know enough about it.
Yeah, I think we need to do more education about it.
Mhm.
And if you did it, it would be a separate measure.
Yeah.
It's
gotta be
a
two
separate
questions.
measure so that one could pass and the other could fail.
Yeah, that's why initially I kind of was skeptical about putting one on the ballot at the same time, because I was afraid some people might say, well, I'll do the 1%, I'll vote for that, but I'm not gonna vote for the 3%.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I
I don't think that'll happen
don't
too
think
much,
that'll happen.
based off the survey.
Yeah, cause if they're in favor of the 1%,
After
then
this.
how could they be against?
No, because they, 1% is for a
1%
specific
is-
project,
And
they
the
know
1%
where
is
it's
lower
gonna
than
be spent.
3%.
But they know where it's gonna be spent, and the 3% is kind of more like, here's this pool of
Now,
money.
at
this is-
some point, I heard, somebody say that 1%,
Yeah.
I know it has to be project oriented, but can it be split between?
Yes, yes, it can be, and it just has to be
Initially,
detailed.
they said just one, then they changed their mind and now it can be split.
One of the cities did like 3 different projects.
Wasn't that
And
last
they
year was
did-
West?
Yeah, it was
like
like
six,
so.
I thought.
Yeah, it was like, we're gonna,
So
we
you
may,
can-
and they said like, we may use it for this.
Yeah.
So they had no like, this
So you can
first or
split
this
it in
second.
many
It
ways
was
that
like-
you want to.
yeah.
then.
Don't forget your wreath.
Make it an attractive
Where is
investment.
Where do you have it, Laura?
I'm just right behind you.
Oh.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes, thank you guys.
You run a good meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Speaking of running meetings.
All those in favor?